Hi everyone, I'm David Aragona, and this is the TimeformUS Road to the Kentucky Derby series, where we handicap the Kentucky Derby prep races. This week there is just one of those, and that's the Sam F. Davis Stakes, a Grade 3 event from Tampa Bay Downs, going a mile and a 16th on the dirt. This race is offering 10 qualifying points towards the winner to make it into the Kentucky Derby. Let's take a look at the entire field. We've got 8 runners signed on, and no surprise to see that the morning line favorite at 6-5 is the number 4 Independence Hall. All eyes will be on him because he is one of the leading Kentucky Derby prospects at this early stage in the season. Got a few challengers though. I mean, the number 6 Premier Star will attract some support. He is also undefeated. And the number 1 Azaweed, coming off a nice performance in the Remsen, he is the third choice on the morning line. But before we get into the rest of the contenders and the pace of this race, let's begin with the main attraction. That's the number 4 Independence Hall. We'll take a look at his past performances. I think the real question with this horse is, can he get back to that truly amazing 120 TimeformUS speed figure that he earned 2 back in the Nashua? I mean, there's just no knocking apart that performance. He was stellar that day, contesting a really honest pace, drawing off with authority in the lane over a really strong field. Horses have come back to validate the strength of that performance and that speed figure subsequently. He came back last time in the Jerome, and I know the Jerome was just a prep for these 2-turn tests that await him and these tougher Derby prep races, but it's hard not to be a little disappointed in that last race. And let's take a look at the stretch run of that Jerome. He's going to win this race easily enough. He was 1-9 odds for a reason. There was really just no serious competition for him. But what you're not going to see in this replay is the real negatives here, and that's the way that he was acting in the paddock before the race. He was just very keyed up, displaying some really poor antics, not listening to his handler's instructions, just really being a bad actor prior to the race. And when they broke from the gate of this race, he broke about a length to a length and a half slowly, and just due to the fact that the field was small and there wasn't a lot of serious competition, he was allowed to rush up into the race and set a pretty moderate pace, or contested, I should say. But in a bigger field with a short run to the first turn at Tampa Bay Downs, if he breaks slowly again to that degree, he could be in trouble in this Sam F. Davis. I'm going to hope that he gets back on track here because I just think he's way more talented than the horses in this race. I'm not going to worry too much about the dip in his speed figure last time. As you see, he went back down to a 103, which is more similar to the number that he earned in his career debut at Parks, because it's not like he was all out to win that last race. Jose Ortiz was just showing him the whip down the lane. He also compromised himself with that poor start. If you look at his prior 2 races, well, he's never been the quickest horse away from the gate. Last time was the first time that he had such a disastrous start. So I'm hoping that he can get back on track here. I know that Mike Trombetta has been doing a lot of work with him. He also has to pass the 2-turn test. I'm really not worried about that. He's got plenty of stamina breeding, being by Constitution, who's also the sire of Tiz the Law, who had no trouble stretching out to this distance in the Holy Bull last weekend. On the dam side, he's a half-brother to Black Onyx, who won the Grade 3 Spiral, going a mile and an eighth a number of years ago. So to me, Independence Hall is just the most talented horse in this race. You're not going to get a big price on him, but I do think he's the horse to beat. What kind of trip is he likely to get? Well, let's take a look at the TimeformUS pace projector, and you see that he's projected to be sharing the lead with the number 6 Premier Star. We'll see how that plays out. A lot of it will depend on how Independence Hall breaks from the gate, but I would imagine that Jose Ortiz will allow John Velasquez on Premier Star to go on and set the pace, because Premier Star really is more of a front-running type than Independence Hall. I'd imagine that Independence Hall's connections will be perfectly content to allow him to stalk the pace, but I do think these two will be up close. The number 8 Chapelou is a bit of a wild card because he's making his first start on the dirt. He's shown some speed in synthetic and turf races. If you watch his races, he's also a very headstrong horse, so his rider Daniel Centeno might have trouble restraining him from going up to try to contest the pace if they're not going that fast. So we'll see how that all shakes out, but I don't feel that this is the kind of race that is going to set up for some deep closer. Moving on to those other contenders, let's take a look at that other undefeated horse, the number 6 Premier Star. He's raced over the 7 furlong distance in both career starts, earning a 97 in his debut and a 104 TimeformUS speed figure last time out. It should be noted the horse that he beat in his debut, Caro, came right back to break his maiden with an improved 106 TimeformUS speed figure, so that was a strong maiden race he was coming out of. Wasn't beating the strongest field last time. We can take a look at the stretch run of that allowance race. He just dominated throughout. He comes to the quarter pole with a significant, insurmountable advantage. Nobody in this race was ever going to be competitive with him. He was bet down to 1-5 odds because he just towered over this field from a speed figure standpoint. The real question with Premier Star is, can he withstand pace pressure if he gets it here? And also, more importantly, can he handle the stretch out around 2 turns? I'm not so sure about the latter question. We'll see. His pedigree is a little bit ambiguous. ambiguous. He's by Tapiture, who can get a 2-turn runner. The Dam, she could route, but she was really way more of a cheap runner. Jorge Navarro, if you look at his stats up in the new DRF formulator, first-time route with non-first-time starters in dirt races. He's just 6 for 22, which is a decent percentage, 27%, but the ROI is not really there, just a 146 ROI on a $2 bet. So for me, Premier Star has to prove it. He's probably going to be the second choice in this race. We'll see what kind of trip he works out, but I wanted to look elsewhere for alternatives. The number 1, Azaweed, I think is a slightly stronger contender because he's already gone the 2 turns before, unlike those 2 horses that we mentioned at the top. He did that last time in the Remsen. And let's take a look at his Remsen effort, because I thought he closed resolutely through the stretch and really was getting to Shotsky at the end of this race, as we've talked about quite a bit. The main track at Aqueduct on that Cigar Mile and Remsen Day card was really favoring speed types, and Shotsky had all the best of it on the lead. But Azaweed, I thought he really was running on well at the end of this race, proving that he's a horse that wants every bit of that 1.125 distance, if not farther in the future. The big concern for Azaweed might be the fact that he's got to cut back to a 1.16 in this race, because he really strikes me as this kind of plodding grinder type that is never going to really come at you with a quick turn of foot, but he's just going to try to wear you down. And we'll see what kind of award that gets him in this race. I'm looking at him not really as a win candidate, but I do think he's a horse that's likely to pick up the pieces, so I'll definitely be using him prominently in exacta and trifecta wagers. Some people might like a horse like Sol Volante coming out of the Mucho Macho Man. Based on that last race, I think it might be reasonable to assume that he improved on the dirt, and he's a better dirt runner because you see that he earned a 105 TimeformUS speed figure in his turf effort 2-back and a 110 when he made his first start on the dirt last time in that Mucho Macho Man. I'm not so sure that I buy into that narrative. I really do still believe this horse is more of a turf runner. His pedigree is all turf influences. He's got that great 88 Breeders' Cup Mile winner Miesk on the top and the bottom side of his pedigree. So while he did handle the dirt last time in the Mucho Macho Man, if we could watch that race, I just never thought he really picked it up in the stretch. He sort of got there at the quarter pole, and this race was not, it's not like the 2 leaders in this race, Chaz and as seen on TV, were flying home. They were slugging it out since about the 3/8 pole, and Sol Volante had really his chance to get past these 2, just couldn't quite do it. I don't want to knock him too much because he did earn a respectable speed figure. I just thought that he picked up pieces, and I'm not really convinced that he's going to get better stretching out to 2 turns on the dirt, and I would like to see him back on the turf eventually. One more horse that I'd want to consider at a price in this race if I'm looking to play trifectas, because I'm trying to get some value in behind Independence Hall, who I'm not picking against, that would be the number 5, No Getting Over Me. Looking at this horse's past performances, they debuted him in a route race, and he actually put forth a pretty impressive effort. He wasn't beating much that day, but he took over the race coming to the quarter pole and really drew off like he wanted every bit of that 1.40 miles around 2 turns, winning by nearly 10 lengths. After that, I think just because they had those stakes races to run it down at Tampa, they turned him back in distance. I don't think he's a horse that really wanted to go 6 furlongs in the inaugural. The 7 furlongs in the Pasco was probably a little bit better for him, but the race last time just went pretty fast and he wasn't quite good enough, but I think stretching back out to the 2 turns might really help this horse. If a horse like Premier Star doesn't step forward, and I'm right about Sol Volante not really being a dirt-preferring horse, then maybe a horse like No Getting Over Me can step up and perhaps get a piece of this for the trifecta. I don't love him. I'm just looking to inject some value into this race because I am not trying to beat the favorite Independence Hall. My picks in this race would be 4, 1, 5, 6, and as I said, I would mostly try to play exactas and trifectas, getting some value underneath the favorite. So that's a look at the Sam F. Davis race. Stakes on Saturday at Tampa Bay Downs, and I'll be back again next week to analyze some more Kentucky Derby preps.